Joe Biden was talking about the voting laws. And he says what we're seeing is the greatest threat since the Civil War. The insurrectionists breached the Capitol. The Confederates never did that. And, we've talked about this a bit in the past several episodes, but I want to add something to this idea. Joe Biden's only saying these things that paint half the country as enemies of the state because he's confident that in the coming years, this group of people will be figuratively eradicated. What I mean by that is politically eradicated. That they're fractured, they can't organize, they won't win elections, and their opinions are completely meaningless. And then it's going to be the overstate or the cathedral that controls everything. And you look at what's happened with the police. And I think actually, interestingly, the resistance of conservatives is what helped convert police departments into woke enforcement agencies. When the left started saying abolish the police and defund the police and put extreme pressure on the police departments, conservatives stopped the departments from completely going under by pushing back. And then you had this argument over whether or not we really want to abolish police. And it worked out really, really well for the woke. Because then the good cops were like, I'm not going to be a part of this. Leave. Who's left? The people who either don't care or are willing to do whatever they're told. And then because conservatives saved the department from being totally abolished, they were able to restock it up with cops who know exactly what these modern political times will bear. Yeah. So now I would only speculate, we're moving into 2022. We're going to have the midterms. They're going to be coming after conservatives like you cannot even believe. They have already been tweeting things like, if we lose the House, it's all over. Yes, their glorious revolution will be all over if Republicans get back the House and can impeach Joe Biden for high crimes and misdemeanors. So what do you think they'll do? They're going to come after right-wing influencers. They're going to come after anti-establishment in any capacity, which includes some anti-war leftist types and people like Jimmy Dore, for instance. I don't know if they'll ban him, but they've gone after people in this area who are anti-war, anti-establishment Democrat. They're going to try and get rid of anybody who might actually make them look bad, and they'll do it very slowly. If they do it overnight, it'll cause too much of an uproar. But they can't afford to lose the House.
Yeah, I think you're seeing this with Glenn Greenwald, right? He's kind of become a bad lefty because he has joined sides with the populist right and talking about how terrible the national security apparatus is. But
he's always been that.
Right.
The populist right finally joined him.
That's right. That's a good point. But here is something to consider: is that I'm not sure that even if Republicans would assume power again, it's not clear that it would actually make a difference, because it seems to be the case that Republicans can win elections, but the left will remain in control of institutions.
Right.
And therefore elections are kind of they're like respites. They're periods where we can catch our breath, maybe plan.
Pressure release.
Yeah, that's all it is. But ultimately, the trajectory of the country does not change.
If we follow the same trajectory as we did in Trump's first term, that is to say, in 2022, Republicans win, but then the Democrats wield the power of the intelligence agencies against conservatives and jams them up, investigates and crushes them, Republicans are at a loss. Republicans don't do this. Republicans don't fight back. And then we move into 2023 with the presidency. It's the same thing. One of my favorite memes right now is this idea. You hear a lot of libertarians are saying things like this. They're like, the Democrats think the Republicans are lying, cheating, and stealing and manipulating to gain more power. And the Republicans think the Democrats are lying, cheating, and stealing to gain more power. People need to realize, both sides. That is not true. Republicans don't do anything. Republicans have no cultural institutions. They don't have universities. They don't have movies. They got nothing. The best conservatives can muster is Ben Shapiro putting out a movie. And that's great. Respect for putting on this movie and getting into entertainment. So they're actually doing something. But conservatives are not reaching children. They're not reaching young people. There was a tweet, I think, I can't remember where I saw this, maybe from Cassandra Fairbanks, that Nickelodeon or Disney Channel was playing anti-Trump ads.
Oh, yeah, she was talking about that.
Was that Cassandra?
Yeah.
Anti-Donald Trump ads on Disney Channel. Why? Those kids will grow up. In 10 years from now, those 10-year-olds will be 20, and they are going to be ideological extremists, and they'll vote. And you won't even realize it. Some of these kids right now, 15 years old, 3 more years, and they're voting. And you got to figure out what these kids are thinking, and I'm sure the Democrats are doing exactly that, and that's why schools are indoctrinating them. Because what's going to happen is you are going to get some classically liberal leftist, and I mean it, actual like lefty individual who, well, I shouldn't say classically liberal. We'll say traditional liberal, agrees with a lot of conservatives, someone similar to maybe like me. They'll run for office, but in 3 to 5 years, they'll be considered far right. We had Vosh on the show and he called me far right. It was hilarious. But he's 20. What is he? 26?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So these 26-year-old lefties on YouTube think 35-year-old Tim Pool, who believes in universal health care and social programs, is far right.
That's good, though. That means you're the Trojan horse. You're controlled opposition.
Yeah,
No, it means that in 10 more years or in even 3 to 5 years, these young people are going to come up and they're going to see a traditional conservative and think Nazi. And they're going to see moderate liberal and think far right conservative.
If the train goes as it's headed. But society is not linear. Things don't happen linear. We constantly are changing the narrative and shifting and altering the way things are happening.
Well, there's one thing to consider, and it's that liberals don't have kids.
Oh yeah.
Right. We're going to outbreed them. I mean, this is already happening. This is already happening, though, right? Like, I mean, when Glenn Greenwald retweets my stuff or interacts with anything, immediately he's labeled as like a crypto fascist, and then people will like screenshot things that I write and be like, this is who Glenn is promoting, this like fascist authoritarian and stuff. And so I mean it's already happening, but I think the anti-Trump ads on, you said Disney?
I think it was Disney Channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anti-Trump ads on Disney is like a good day for Disney, considering all of the other smut that they that they run for children.
China.
And I think this kind of gets to the issue of like critical race theory, where I really appreciate the work. Christopher Rufo is like a national treasure, but I think he has shown that critical race theory goes so much deeper than anyone really thought it did. And that it has already infected every single cultural and social tissue, that the task of extirpating critical race theory is actually much bigger and much more daunting than I think anyone had imagined before Rufo came on the scene and started showing people how pervasive this stuff is. So
yeah, I want to well, actually we'll jump in a second. Conservatives need to start producing culture. I guess I was trying to look something up but we'll pull that up in a second. If there is something interesting that we saw with Pew Research, and that is that the previous generation is slightly more conservative. The Gen Z is a little bit more conservative than millennials, but only a little bit. And that probably has a lot to do with the fact that you said, conservatives are outbreeding liberals. So I have to imagine. So I want to add this to what I was saying before about, next 3 to 5 years, you might see some dramatic changes. It's entirely possible I'm wrong, because in 10 years, the generation alpha, or, whatever comes after alpha, I don't know.
Alpha gen.
Is that what it is?
It's alpha gen, then beta gen. Yeah, alpha gen.
They might be substantially more conservative by simply the fact that conservatives have kids. So you look at Ben Shapiro, I love it. They call him an incel. He's got how many kids does the guy have?
4,
like 12?
Oh, yeah.
12 kids?
Yeah.
No,
Does
he's
he
like
really?
four kids. No, he's like 4 kids.
Yeah.
he has more kids than the people that call him an incel.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. It's right. So, actually, I could be completely wrong. We could be 10 years out from a conservative resurgence for a lot of reasons. It could be that all of this stuff with police, all of this stuff with the military is freaking out regular people. Come August 15th, as Bannon said, we see these in schools, the parents freak out at what their kids are learning. And then 10 years goes by, and the millennials are now in their mid to late 40s. And then the next generation is actually very woke, but most of the generation actually is more conservative simply by the amount of conservative kids are growing up.
Yeah.
So that's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
This could be a fluke.
Reaction is very possible. And as pessimistic and cynical as I am in the short term, I have to be optimistic about the future, about the long term, because I have kids. I've got one who's about a year old, and then I've got another one on the way in December. And so I have to hold out hope that something like this is going to happen, because the idea of just like settling on the notion that the future will be so much more horrible for my kids, it just seems unacceptable to me. So
Look at what AOC and a bunch of these leftists are saying. Oh, we can't have kids because of climate change. It's like, okay, they're not going to have
Right
kids.
then.
Conservatives going to have kids.
right, yeah,
And then
right.
when they do, I mean, this could be actually substantial. If you look at millennials today, not having kids, but mostly the left ones. A lot of like non-political people have kids. Conservatives have kids. Lefty liberal type millennials don't have kids. So what happens in 20 years? Is this country going to become a bunch of suit-wearing young Republicans?
Well, a paranoid mind might rebut you by saying, well, this is why Democrats like open borders, because they can import new recruits, so to speak. So,
and why they're going after schools.
Right.
They know they don't have kids, so they got to take yours.
Exactly.
right.
Yeah.
One problem I'm finding with conservatism by the label, I guess, is that I think that we need to kind of reintroduce or just enforce some sort of social conservatism in that, like, you know, we talk a lot about morality and like not flying too far off, but we need some like drastic legal liberalism. I think we need to take liberty with our crappy system and change it. So I think conservative politicians are not getting anything done. You know, they've been sitting around just kind of like enjoying the status quo. And that's a problem.
Just say as much as you need to get elected and then do nothing.
Yeah, and we need like really to alter the system. The Federal Reserve's gone roughshod. The Central
the law
Electric
enforcement
Grid.
agencies, the police departments.
Yeah, we've got like all these
local governments. I mean, yeah. You know, I mean, yesterday's conversation was like particularly brutal. We were talking about just do these with anarcho tyranny keep coming up. I think anarcho tyranny is obviously happening. It's been happening for some years now. And I think that's the easiest way to understand that the system probably already collapsed. Like, if you have people who feel like calling the police is pointless, legitimately, like not like Black Lives Matter where they're like, oh, no, I can't call the cops if, you know. No, like people legitimately saying, I know they're not going to come here and deal with this riot. But then also fearing if the rioters attack your house, you will get arrested. The system is completely broken.
Well, I think the issue with anarcho tyranny is that the anarcho part is by design. It's a feature, not a bug.
Mm-hmm.
And the point of it is to kind of paralyze the decent populace into feeling like they can't do any of the things you just described. They can't defend themselves. They can't have control over what their kids learn in schools and things like that. So I guess it seems like the system has failed, but it might actually be the case that it's more powerful than ever. But on the other hand, historically, when regimes become more repressive and more overt in the methods with which they coerce people to behave a certain way and to talk a certain way and think a certain way, is usually when they're on the verge of crumbling or instigating a kind of reaction. Because really effective systems of control are impersonal and automatic. So when you have to start actively policing people, like we're seeing now, the Capitol Police leaving the Capitol, things like that, or the Biden administration talking about monitoring text messages, things like that. That stuff is, as much as it shows like the power and the boldness of the established political order, it also tells us that it's kind of in this precarious position where it's this close to maybe overplaying its hand.
Yeah.
I think about that with text censorship too, because we should have a system, I think, more that's granular where you can choose what you see rather than them choosing what you see. The fact that they're in there deciding who gets to say what is like, yeah, they're powerful, but it's also showing how the cracks in their system, like,
well, you know,
they're afraid.
You look at big tech, and first I'll just say you're right. The moves they're making show an increasing desperation and panic. And then you look at big tech censorship, and I can't figure out for the life of me what their goal is with big tech censorship. I mean this honestly, because these are some of the dumbest. They're supposedly some of the smartest people, but boy, are they dumb. I mean, if you had a sit-down meeting, you could figure out what was happening in only a few minutes. I said this to Jack Dorsey on the Joe Rogan Experience when I was just like at the end of the show, I'm like, I'm getting a van. And they were like, they started laughing. And I'm like, y'all think I'm joking. But I was like, if you keep doing what you're doing with this hyperpolarization on Twitter, people are going to come to a civil war of sorts. They're going to go after each other. It's going to be insane. So I'm getting that van ready. I'm going to go bug out. And, you know, people were messaging me laughing, saying, it's so funny. I'm like, y'all think I'm joking?
Yeah.
Now look where we are. With the police taking a knee, with the riots, with COVID, everything that's happened since then has been a dramatic escalation. Yeah. It's like, I certainly was not wrong. I didn't give a good timeline. But you look at what these tech companies are doing, I couldn't figure it out. I can sit here and say, here's what they started doing in 2000, or in 2010, in 2011, 2012, and look at each year the changes they made. Twitter, free speech wing of the free speech party. They used that to build themselves up, create a platform. Then you look at the past several years. They make moves to make money. They make moves to hyperpolarize. What they are doing is only making things increasingly worse. Yeah. So the question is Twitter trying to stop the polarization? Well, they're not doing that. So it's still only getting worse, and it has been getting worse. Okay, then they want the polarization. Well, I guess if I looked at what they were doing and someone said, take a look at this system and the equation and the map, what is happening? I'd say Jack Dorsey wants a civil war. Mark Zuckerberg and Susan Wojcicki want people to literally attack each other in the streets. That's the only thing I can understand from it.
Yeah. So to Ian's point, I think you're also seeing this in the shift toward antitrust action. Increasingly, conservatives, populists are open to antitrust action. I think part of it is just a matter of enmity. People are angry, right? And to your point, Jeff Bezos literally booting Parler off the internet was probably the stupidest thing he could have done. Because what that did, far from killing whatever narrative was being promoted on Parler that he thought was problematic, I think it was related to the January 6th thing, instead it just resulted in more people than ever, especially conservatives, who generally I think would have been opposed to something like antitrust, like taking a hammer and smashing Amazon, are now all for it.
Yeah.
So you're seeing this now.
But there's no political willpower to do it.
No. There is absolutely an effort to kind of throw an olive branch to the populists and say, look, we're trying to do something. We're putting together a raft of legislation. We're trying to take measures to bring to heel Amazon and Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. But you're right that there's this kind of reluctance and a way to do something without actually doing anything. But I think that the kind of like the cat's out of the bag, and it can only escalate. I think you're only going to see this trend toward demands for antitrust action increase, at least from conservatives. I think that liberals are probably more opposed to it. Liberals are more opposed to it because they're in power right now. These institutions, these corporations, for the most part, they're doing what they want them to do. And so at the same time that you have conservatives pushing for antitrust action, you have people who are on the left saying, well, the thing that Facebook needs to do is not be broken up, but actually just kick conservatives off of the platform completely. I think Jen Psaki said something recently that if Facebook bans you, you should be banned from all platforms.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.